Hey, you human family, I tried to go live and I was not successful. For some reason, it kept saying I had poor internet connection. I think I know what the problem is, but I'll have to resolve that at a later time. Um, I don't know how much recording time I have on this phone. And when I am able to go live, I will have the comments removed so I can't see them because they distract me when I'm trying to express myself. And it's not to say that I don't want you to comment, because you can comment if you please, as long as it follows my guideline. Don't come in here talking crap about what you think and believe about God. It has to be strictly scripture. And I'm not debating anybody about scripture either. But anyway, the title of this video was I Be Thinking, and I be thinking about growing old. And the reason this has come up is because, okay, number one, I'm growing old and I have some issues, health issues that are upon me that have to be taken care of. Now, next week, Monday, I'm scheduled to have the bone biopsy done, and it's going to take, I think, roughly 4 hours or so. They told me what time I have to arrive there, and that the procedure will I'll go there and be there by 11, and then the procedure is done at 1:30, and I think it's finished about 3:30. And it says that I'll have to have somebody there with me after the procedure is done to get me back home, because apparently I won't be able to function very well or safely. I know they better put me to sleep. That's what they said, that I'll be asleep. But anyway, so this is a dilemma that I'm in. I have to go, and I don't have anybody that I can really. Well, let me put it this way. This is why God mandated that you care for your elderly parents. Um, in Matthew 15:5, those old scribes and Pharisees, they were trying to nullify the commandment of God that you take care of your mother and your father. And in this particular case, I think it was financial. And what those scribes and Pharisees were doing was they were nullifying God's law by telling the the children that if they gifted to God, they didn't necessarily have to give to the parents. In other words, they didn't have to take care of the parents. They didn't have to provide for them, which was a blatant lie, because God had already outlined what was to be done. So what I wanted to say was, we're all disconnected. We're disconnected from God. And I've explained that to you all. And those who are new and don't know what I mean by it, go back and watch some of the videos so you can get a full understanding. I'll try to give you a brief synopsis. DFG for me is my term, my analogy used for stating that someone is DFG, they are disconnected from God. And then I go on to tell why they're disconnected from God, how they became disconnected from God, and what the solution is. And the solution is to get in tune with the scriptures, to ask Jesus to come in, to to sincerely look for Him, and then read and study the scriptures, study and search the scriptures. Then God will come in, and then He will provide a teacher for you, a teacher that He has raised up and has given the ability to break down that Bible, which is a mystery, and then give you full understanding. But now back to my title, Growing Old, I be thinking. Since I have to do this next Monday, I've been getting a little bit of pushback from one of my uh, children that I'm depending on to get me there and to see me through. And they were giving their reasons for having some um, concerns about it. And to me, there was really no issue and no problem, even with what they expressed their concern is for, because then I go back to reflecting when I was a young parent. And this is why I believe that God, this is why God set this up. See, He set up everything perfectly. If everybody just were following Him, if everybody was connected to God, if everybody had the true understanding and the knowledge of the real Jesus Christ and what His commandments were, there would be none of this. But I was reflecting and thinking now when I was a young parent, and I was by myself parenting my three children, there were lots of times that I was inconvenienced. Inconvenienced. When one gets sick and you have to give that medication out around the clock, if they say every 8 hours or every 6 hours or every 4 hours, whatever the case may be, you got to be Johnny on the spot. You're going to have to be there to administer that medicine at that time. If one is sick, you may have to be up through the night with that one, trying to nurse them or get them comfortable. You maintain a job and work, and then you take your money and you make all type of sacrifices. You pay the bills and you keep a roof over their head and you keep food on the table and you keep clothes on their backs and you do all the things that hopefully a parent is supposed to do. So this thing can get really convoluted, but I'm really wanting you guys to understand where I'm coming from. Being a single parent, you're fortunate, very fortunate, if you're having a single parent or even two parents that live in the same household and they are reasonably sane and good, because there's a lot of children who get parents they didn't ask for, and I'm sure that they're very unhappy with. They are neglectful. They don't do what their duties are as a parent to that child, and so that child may be coming through catching he double hockey sticks from the whole period of time they were conceived and birthed and grow up in this household where it's totally dysfunctional or broken down to where they are receiving nothing. Well, I've seen in my field of work a lot of grandparents come through the school system where they are thrust back into the position of having to be the caregiver of small children. I've seen some situations and uh, where parents were not parents. They were only parent in name only, but they were not a parent. They were not a parent. They were too busy drinking, drugging, sexing, chasing men, chasing women, stealing, doing, whatever the case may be, whatever their problem or their issue was. But they were busy doing that, and the children were secondary. Their children were not on their minds at all. At all. They could have cared less if they ate. And then just think about it. Some homes, the children are being brutalized in, being beaten, being assaulted, being abused, being hurt, being harmed. But when you think that you were a parent, now I'm getting hot. When you think that you were the type of parent that you should have been, and this is being void of you not being connected to God, but you are reasonably a parent that's doing what you're supposed to do, but you may not be doing it 110% correctly, because you're going to fall short, because why? You're disconnected from God. So therefore, what you're doing it under the strength of your own knowledge and wisdom. You're doing what you feel is right or what you know to be right, and you may be falling short. It's not you may be falling short. You're falling short because you're disconnected from God. But uh, I was watching a movie last night and I wrote it down because I'm going to share it with you guys, and maybe you all will be interested in watching it too. It's related to this topic. But the movie was titled Fire in the Dark. Fire, like flames, fire in the dark. And it starred Olympia Dukakis, Lindsay Wagner, Edward Herman, and Gene Stapleton. You know, Gene Stapleton played in Archie Bunker. But anyway, this story was about a 75-year-old widow with battles as she struggles with being a burden to those she loved. And though determined not to rely on her children, she is forced to move in with her daughter after a serious fall, and the family learns to face the future with dignity and with hope. Well, I said all that to say this. Even in the world, there are writers and directors who have tried to address this problem because it's probably happening all over the world. As parents grow older in life and become ill and frail, there's a lot of things going on here. Of course, you know that the children have obligations of their own. You know that the children have their own lives that they have to contend with. Um, the parent can become what would seem to be a burden, but I look at it as just like it's it's an even exchange. It's even trade because when we reverse the roles, when you were a child, myself, you, and anybody else out there, when you were an infant or a baby, and you had a parent who was reasonably a parent, they too were in a uncomfortable spot. They were caring for you, and I'm sure that it was not ideal all the time. I know the case it wasn't for me. I know that there were lots of times where um, the children, if I viewed it in the way that some people would have, they were a hindrance or, in a way, a burden to me, but I never viewed it as a burden. I always did what I had to do. I always made the proper sacrifices. I always made the best choices. I always did the right thing, the correct thing, and that was provide for my children financially, uh, physically, with nurturing the body and feeding them and clothing them and trying to guide them in the right pathway. And even though I might have fallen short, I'm quite sure I did. And the reason why was because I was disconnected from God. So therefore, I know that every move that I made was not in the right pathway. But I did at that time, not being connected to God, I did what I thought was reasonably the right thing to do. I didn't do as some parents did, and that was I was not a drug addict or alcoholic or someone of that caliber where the children became neglected because of my habit. I was not a street woman where my doors were open to any and everybody to come in and my children could fall to a victim of being prey to some predator out there. And I tried my best. Um, and at times things got hard for me. They got very, very hard. And I had no one to depend on to help me out of spots and situations that were tight or that were very difficult for me. And I struggled through and I managed to get through with God's help. And I achieved the fact my children reached adulthood. And I should say they reached adulthood relatively unscathed. They might have been damaged a little bit by me from some of my parenting skills because like I said, I was a hollerer and a big cursor. I cussed all the time. And as one of my children said to me, they never were called by name. I don't know if that's because I would have to Rolodex my brain. You know how you go to calling somebody and you don't get the right name, so you say, "Come here, Jack, Joe, John." You're coming up with all these names in the household, trying to get the one that you're really calling. So what I did to eliminate that, a lot of times I just said, "Come here, boy. Come here, girl," whatever. And I know that's wrong, and I'm laughing about it now, but I was guilty of that. Come here, boy. Come here, girl. And I knew that they had names, but shoot me for falling short. But you can also be thankful that I was not one of those parents that I've encountered in my profession, my professional life, I saw a lot of grandparents come to my spot and sit there, and they would tell me their stories of why they were now suddenly thrust back into the position of raising their grandchildren long after they done raised their own children. This thing is broken. Can't you see how it's broken? And then people not actively seeking out God, not actively searching for Jesus, you're going to stay broken, because instead of searching for Jesus, you're looking for the things that you want. You're looking for that satisfaction, that self-satisfaction. Let me look at my notes. And this growing old, it makes you feel very, very bad, because after spending all of your life being independent, and I know I'm a big one on this one. I mean, I would rather eat slop with the pigs than to be perceived as a nuisance or a bother. I always tried to have everything that I needed on my own independently. I always had my kitchen stocked the way it should be stocked. I always had the things that I needed, that I knew I needed to run a household, to take care of my children, to provide for myself. Any of the medicines that you needed, I always had that. I always had my gas money. I always had my insurance. Everything was always taken care of. I was a woman about business. I always managed to keep all of my needs covered. And that way I didn't have to seek out friends. I didn't have to ask different ones, could you loan me this? Can I borrow this? I didn't have to do that, because I always operated very effectively when it came to managing my household, my funds, my money. Uh, I neglected myself because, well, for two reasons. One, having three children on your own, there's a lot of times that you would want to do something with your money, but you know that you can't, because you got three small lives that are dependent on you. So to give you an example would be that if I were in the mall and I saw a lovely suit that I wanted to sport to work, and the suit was a matter of a couple of $100s or so, I knew right away I couldn't get it, because to make a purchase of a $200 for a suit, and I had three children, and not knowing what the future may encounter with those children, if one of them should get sick or whatever, then that $200 would be really a frivolous spend, expense. It would be a waste of money. I often tell my kids that there were times when I would be kind of upset and angry because I couldn't dress the part or look the part, be the way that I wanted to be, or the way that I saw myself presenting myself to the world. Once I did walk out of the institution as an educated woman, I didn't have that opportunity, because being a single parent, a lot of things that I wanted to do, I couldn't do because I had children. And I chose to do the better thing than to do the desires of my heart, of what I wanted to do. So when you become older, and now that you're depending on some help, or you're needing help, and it appears that they may be hesitant, or they are complaining a lot, like they don't want to help you, it can make you feel really bad. It can make you feel worthless. A lot of times I've sit up and said to myself, if I had known beforehand, or could look down the road and foresee some of the disappointment that I would feel in being a parent, I probably would have left some of y'all on the doorstep somewhere. I could have put y'all out on the corner, just not had you at all, or just not made the sacrifices I did, because I'm thinking it was such a thankless job. Once gone through all of this sacrifice, and doing what it is that you need to do to be this stand-up type of parent, and then when you get old, or you grow old, or you need the assistance or the help of the children that you made all of the sacrifice for, and they make you feel as though you are a burden. That's a very bad feeling to have, and that's why I'm always guilty of saying that when it's my time to go, I want God to take me off my feet, because I know what God intends for things to be, how He intends things to be. He intends for the youth, the children, to care for their aging parents. But in today's world, with everybody DFG, disconnected from God, you are very fortunate if you get that opportunity, if you have that pleasure, if you have children who are savvy enough, caring enough that they think ahead. Because it appears to me that they just it don't ever cross their mind that you were ever once them, young, youthful, headstrong, desires bursting out of your whole body, but you did what was right, and that was you restrained from making frivolous purchases. You refrained from walking away from your responsibilities or your duties as a parent. That you did what it was that you were supposed to do, and this appears to be the thanks that you receive, is that your children appear to be thoughtless, unconcerned, uncaring, selfish, uh, make you feel bad by making you feel as though you are a burden. And that's something else too that parents can do to their kids. They can make their children feel like a burden by constantly telling them over and over and over all through their childhood days, you guys are this and you guys are that. And which I never did that. I never told my children that they were a burden to me. Because now looking back, yes, they were a burden. I'd be lying if I didn't say that they were, because if I had been alone or if I had a helpmate, the job could have been much easier. But being alone and doing that job, it was a lot of times when, the stress was on like 1,000. The stress was there. And I kept my thoughts to myself. I never spoke against the fathers in a negative way where they could be perceived as no accounts or uh, whatever. I just didn't do that. I didn't have time to be about the business of putting down an individual. I was too much about the business of taking care of what it was I needed to do. Um, and that's a story of a whole nother time, because after I did get my children grown, it did come to me that the father was uh, telling his son that he had paid me child support, which was a blatant lie. I can recall very clearly when we divorced, uh, the judge ordered him to pay $120, and at that time that was no money. It's no money today for sure, but at that time, I don't know, $120 may have been considered some money, and maybe it wasn't. I don't think it was, but $120 a month, of which he only paid two payments, and after that I never received another dime. And when I tried to go to the courts to get that enforced, they told me I had to come up with more money and pay again for a lawyer to go after him to make him pay this 120. And I'm like, never happened. I'm going on about my business. But this parent happened to tell that child of his that, and they were holding that against me and thinking I was being the fraudulent one or the one that was a lie. I said, that's a blatant lie. And had you told me that when I seen this person in my presence, I would have told them in their face, in front of your face, that they were telling a lie. If they paid any child support, they paid it to another lady for other children that they had, but they didn't. They didn't pay it to me, and I got no reason to lie. And there was only one that stepped to the plate and did what he was supposed to do, and that was because he had a father that was a stand-up guy, and that parent, that father, paid every dime from birth until the legal age of cutoff of support. And I mean, didn't have to sweat him for not one penny, one dime, not one time. And so he was a very stand up guy. And I'm going to say that the reason he was a stand up guy was probably because he had a stand up father. Mm-hmm. He had a very stand up father. And I appreciate him to this day, although I don't know. And I try to talk on this end to get that child to uh, communicate more, reach out, make phone calls. I provided numbers. I bought cards and everything. And you just can't make people do stuff, you know. So for whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be any animosity, but it just seems to be a lack of trying or effort to do anything. So I just choose to leave that alone. I can't force or make people do stuff. Um, but yeah, um, sometimes you do. You wish that you had just walked away from your responsibilities as a parent because you're seeing how things are playing out for you now, later in life as you're growing older. But what I try to impress on the minds of my children is that if God blesses you to live, your day is coming too. Your time is coming too. That's the whole thing about this whole process. It just repeats itself. It repeats itself. It goes in a circle. It goes in a cycle. And if you're not smart enough, you won't catch it. You won't understand it. And but it doesn't make you feel good. So if you guys get a chance, watch that movie. It does a fairly good job of explaining some issues dealing with the elderly, but then again, it doesn't adhere to God's plan or rules scripturally. So I want you to know that. So a lot of things in the movie I did not agree with, and I could expound on it further and tell you why that shouldn't have been said or that shouldn't have been done. But they handled the movie pretty good. They had a pretty good handle on it, so that the elderly mother, the aging mother, it did pan out good for her. The results at the end of the movie, everybody seemed to be faring pretty good. But we're all broken, we're all malfunctioning, we're all disconnected from God, so we don't have the full understanding of what our role and our duties are, what God's position is on it, and what He expects to happen, and why He mandates and commands the way He does. You know, that the child does take care of the aging parent. And it all makes sense to me. I mean, it's just fair turnaround. If you did it when they were born, is possibly why God has got it set up the way He got it set up. That you could have been starved to death, you could have been pushed to the side, you could have been neglected, you could have been abused, and a lot of children are. A lot of children are. I don't want to glaze over that lightly. A lot of babies are, and trust me when I say I be thinking. Sometimes I can sit up here and think about it. I know a lot of times on my job when I would sit up and be talking to grandparents, and they would be telling me what was transpiring in their lives and why they were the caregivers of their grandbabies. A lot of times we'd be sitting up there blubbering and crying together because it hurt me deeply. It hurts me bad to know that children are being hurt and harmed, and that the elderly people are being hurt and harmed too. I know some stories in that area too. Um, but yes, I just I just see and understand. I see and understand how all of it works together and how it comes about to play out the way that it does. But if a person is connected with God the way that they should be, and they have understanding of Jesus Christ and His commandments, then it would be less of a confusion, and you can do what is mandated by us, by God, for us to do. because as long as you are breathing and living, God has given you the opportunity to continue to live. One day it's going to be you sitting in those shoes of the aging elderly parent, and you'll get to see and experience what it is that I and any other person, such as myself, is feeling about the situation. You don't want to become a burden to anybody. You don't want to appear to be bothersome, but we all need help sometimes, all of us. And I think that's a lesson that God is showing me too, because I always lived and operated in the position where I tried to have everything covered so I wouldn't have to bother anybody for nothing, nothing. So it's hard to watch your independence go by the side when it's out of your control. Now, so far, I'm still able to do 95% of whatever I need to do. I have a little problem at nighttime seeing, so I don't drive as at nighttime because I don't want to get myself in trouble. Can't see. I need glasses probably so I can see at a distance. I can see fine close up, read small print like someone 20 years old. But at nighttime or looking out in a distance, I don't see very clearly. But yeah, I hope I've touched on a little bit of what I wanted to talk about in this video about growing old. It's not fun um, when you are so used to moving at your own will, at your own pace, doing what it is that you want to do. It's very hard to surrender to uh, things changing. And you know what? Now that I'm talking about it, I think about many, many years ago. It was probably 20 or 30 years ago, maybe longer than that, because I told you I don't watch television. But many, many years ago, I was watching television and I saw a documentary where a guy had gone into the prison and he was interviewing elderly people that had found themselves incarcerated after living all them years without being in trouble, and then they get old and then find themselves incarcerated in prison. Well, I was two that stood out to me, and it seems like it fits right here. And I'm going to share that story. One was an elderly white guy, and the other one was an elderly black guy. And it's just no point in reason in telling you their race other than I just want to tell you. But when the white guy was interviewed, he said he gave his answer. The guy asked him. He said, "Well, what happened that you find yourself incarcerated after living all your life, and then waited till you got old?" And he said that his came about like this. He had a wife, and he said the wife was cheating on him. Now this, I'm laughing and funny, but none of this is funny, probably to the average person, but it is to me. And he said he had a wife and she was cheating on him. And he said he told her she better stop cheating. And she said, "Well, if I don't stop cheating, what you gonna do?" He said, "I'm gonna make you stop cheating." And that's what he did. He killed her. And he found himself in prison. Now the black guy, he was asked the same question. What happened that he found himself incarcerated at this late stage in life, and he was saying that he had gotten to the place where he could no longer live alone and he had to have assistance to live. So his son came and moved him in the house with him and his wife. And he said that the wife was real, you know, the B word, and she was just complaining about every little thing. And that's a hard something to do. If you used to being independent, living on your own, and you living in the spot now with somebody who's running stuff, and you're not running the show anymore, as Miss Ragsdale used to say, I loved her to death. Miss Ragsdale used to call something the shack bully. She said she was the shack bully, meaning that she ran the shack. So she was the shack bully. And that's what I like to call myself, the shack bully. But anyway, see, he was no longer the shack bully, so his son moved him in the house with him. And the wife was one of these B words, and she was just nagging at him completely all the time about first one thing and another, and it was irritating the old guy. And so he said that one day he was going to the refrigerator, and she told him something about don't go to the refrigerator, and he had just had too much of her nagging and complaining and bossing him and trying to tell him what to do, well, virtually just mistreating him. He killed her. So uh, those were two incidents that just stood out in my mind, and they stand clear in my thinking. I can see how it happened, and I can understand how it happened, because everybody is in their own little world. I'm sure that woman that was cheating probably felt like she had the upper hand of the old guy, being married to the old guy. I don't know if he was old when they married, or had they been married. I don't know the background of that. I don't recall. I forget. But he told her he was gonna make her stop cheating, and he did. And then the other guy, he said he wasn't gonna let her boss him or tell him what to do, so he finished her off. So uh, this aging thing, it's a process, and we're all accustomed to being independent and doing as we see and as we please. And then when the day comes where you're no longer able to see as well as you once saw, or in this case of this story, fire in the dark. The reason the lady had to go stay with her daughter was because she was becoming less and less able to do for herself, and she had fallen and broke her hip, and then different things were occurring and happening. So they felt it would be safer that she had somebody to look after her, and so they discussed nursing home and all this, So all that's in the movie. But I found the movie very, very good, very true to life in a lot of ways, in a lot of instances. And I thought that this discussion was something that I'd be thinking about, that I could come to the internet and talk about and discuss with people. So if any of you guys understand or follow what I'm saying, or maybe perhaps you're in the same situation as what we've been discussing on this video, then you can make your comments in the section, and then I can reply to them if I so feel like it. Um, I'm sure that I have skipped and missed some things that I probably want to say, and after I close this video out, I'll be like, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I say that? But yes, God meant for the children to assist and help the aging parents, and they shouldn't be made to feel as though they were a burden, just as children should not be made to feel as though they are a burden when oftentimes they are. So if the parent is a burden, yes, you got to work. Yes, you got to do this and you got to do that. But that very parent that you're feeling like, well, I just don't have the time, or it's inconveniencing me. Think about it. When you were young, you might have inconvenienced them too, but they did what they had to do. So I'm gonna close the video out now, and surprisingly, I'm not being as hateful as I started out to be, because I was getting mad. What do you mean? No. And I'm getting a little bit irritated with my dentist, because they are supposed to call my cardiologist, and I've been the go-between person. I've been calling both of them, and I know what is what. The cardiologist told me that they need to speak with the dentist so that they can tell them what protocol to follow in order to treat my missing teeth, pulling of the teeth, and fitting of my partial plate. And when I call the dentist office tells me, well, the dentist is busy, and as soon as he gets um, able or clear to, he will call your cardiologist. Well, I look at it like this: pick up the phone. It's just a little 5-minute phone conversation, so he can tell you what it is that you need to do. And I've been assured by the dentist office that they have done work before on other people who have on medication like blood thinners. So I'm not really concerned with that, but I am a little anxious to get my smile back. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I've been thinking about. So I'm going to close out for now, and hopefully I can get my internet connection back together so I can go live that way. Um, you all be blessed. Treat your parents with love and affection, even if you got some tyrants, even if you got some some evil ones. Learn how to dance around them and stay respectful. And we're going to have to talk about that one day, too. I'm going to talk about having difficult parents and having difficult children and how you should handle that and deal with it. And you can't live your life uh, being mean, hurtful, or neglectful toward one another. That's just not the way to be. And I won't go there because it'll just start the conversation. But y'all be blessed. Remember to open your Bible and get an understanding.